The first time I heard my wife call me a loser, I was standing in the kitchen of our suburban Houston home, holding a pregnancy test that showed 2 pink lines. The second time, she was drunk at a party, telling her best friend how her boring accountant husband would be paying for another man's baby. That second time changed everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Grant Ellison, and I'm 37 years old. I work as a senior accountant at Henderson & Associates, where I spend my days making sure numbers add up correctly. It's methodical work that requires patience and attention to detail, skills that would prove more valuable than I ever imagined. The party was at Wade Fuller's place, a flashy dental assistant who worked with my wife Lora at Dr. Klein's clinic. Wade lived in one of those cookie-cutter developments where every house looked identical except for the color of the shutters. His place had an open floor plan, granite countertops he probably couldn't afford, and a backyard pool that screamed, "Look at me." Lora had been acting strange for months. Late nights at work, deleted text messages, and sudden interest in prenatal yoga classes that never seemed to actually happen. When she announced her pregnancy, I felt a mix of joy and confusion. We'd been trying for years with no success, and suddenly, miraculously, she was expecting. "Grant, you should mingle more," Lora had said earlier that evening, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she used when other people were listening. "You're always so serious." I nursed my beer and watched her work the room. At 35, Lora was still attractive in that dental hygienist way, perfect teeth, highlighted hair, always put together. She knew how to command attention, especially from men like Wade. The kitchen was crowded and loud, filled with the kind of gossip that flows freely when people have had too much to drink. I was refilling my beer when I heard Laura's distinctive laugh from the living room. She was sitting on the couch with Sabrina Martinez, her best friend and fellow gossip enthusiast. "I swear, Sabrina, sometimes I can't believe how this worked out," Lora was saying, her words slightly slurred. "My boring husband will be paying for our baby, and he doesn't even know it's not his." My hand froze on the beer tap. The conversation around me seemed to fade into white noise. "Girl, you are terrible," Sabrina giggled, "but Wade is so much hotter than Grant. At least the baby will be good-looking." "Right? Can you imagine if it actually looked like Grant? All pale and boring with those sad brown eyes. Thank God for good genetics." They dissolved into laughter while I stood there, beer overflowing from my cup onto my hand. The cold liquid snapped me back to reality, and I turned off the tap and grabbed some paper towels, my mind racing. Wade appeared in the kitchen, his gym-sculpted frame filling out a tight polo shirt. He had that cocky swagger of a guy who thought he was God's gift to women. "Hey, Grant, how's the baby daddy doing?" The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. "Just fine, Wade. How's work treating you?" "Can't complain. Your wife's been a real team player lately, always willing to stay late and help out." He winked, and I wanted to punch that smug expression off his face. Instead, I smiled. "She's dedicated, that's for sure." "You're a lucky man, Grant. Really lucky." I nodded and walked away before I said something I'd regret. Lucky? Right. The rest of the party passed in a blur. I made small talk, laughed at appropriate moments, and played the part of the happy, expectant father. But inside, my accountant brain was already working, cataloging details and calculating possibilities. During the drive home, Lora chattered about the party while I focused on the road. "Did you have fun? I know these things aren't really your scene, but I thought you did well. Wade said you seemed more relaxed than usual." "Wade said that?" "Yeah, he thinks you're a good guy. He said I'm lucky to have such a stable husband." Stable. That was code for boring, predictable, safe. The kind of man who would provide for a child without asking too many questions. "That's nice of him to say." "I'm glad you two get along. It makes things easier at work when everyone's friends." Friends. Another interesting word choice. Back home, I helped Lora get ready for bed while she continued her alcohol-fueled commentary about the party. "Sabrina looked good tonight, don't you think? She's been working out with this new trainer. Very hands-on approach, if you know what I mean." I made appropriate noises while my mind worked through what I'd overheard. Lora fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling. 15 years of marriage, and I thought I knew this woman. Apparently, I didn't know her at all. The next morning, Lora was hungover and apologetic. "I think I had too much wine last night. I hope I didn't embarrass you." "Not at all. You were fine." She kissed my cheek before leaving for work. The same routine we'd followed for years. But now it felt like performance art. After she left, I sat in my home office and opened a new spreadsheet on my computer. At the top, I typed Project Audit. Below that, I created columns for dates, observations, evidence, and next steps. Numbers don't lie, but people sure as hell do. And I had just been promoted to auditor-in-chief of my own life. The thing about being an accountant is that you develop certain skills. You learn to spot inconsistencies, follow paper trails, and document everything. You become comfortable with uncomfortable truths because numbers never lie to make you feel better. Over the next 2 weeks, I applied these skills to my marriage with the same methodical approach I use for corporate audits. Lora's phone habits were the first red flag. She'd always been attached to her device, but now she guarded it like state secrets. She took it to the bathroom, kept it face down during dinner, and had started charging it on her side of the bed instead of the kitchen counter. New security policy at work, she explained when I asked about her sudden password changes. Dr. Klein is really strict about patient privacy. Interesting, since she'd never mentioned this policy before, and her phone contained no patient information. I started documenting her schedule. Lora claimed to work late 3 nights a week, but when I called the clinic after hours, no one answered. Her prenatal yoga classes happened at times when the studio was closed. I knew this because I drove by and checked. The insurance paperwork provided the most damning evidence. While reviewing our health coverage for the pregnancy, I noticed something odd. On the emergency contact forms for Lora's prenatal appointments, Wade Fuller's name appeared as secondary contact and birth partner. Birth partner. Not father, but close enough. I made copies of everything and stored them in a safety deposit box Lora didn't know about. In my profession, you learn that documentation is everything. Memories fade, people lie, but paperwork endures. The prenatal DNA test was easier to arrange than I'd expected. During a routine appointment with Dr. Nguyen, Lora's obstetrician, I mentioned my family history of genetic disorders. We could do a comprehensive screening, Dr. Nguyen suggested. It includes paternity confirmation as part of the genetic analysis, standard procedure for high-risk pregnancies. Lora agreed without hesitation, probably because she thought there was no way I'd suspect anything. After all, I was just her boring, trusting husband. While waiting for results, I began the financial preparations. I opened a separate checking account and started moving money from our joint savings. Nothing illegal or suspicious, just exercising my legal right to access marital assets. I changed passwords on accounts where I was the primary holder and made copies of all our financial documents. My lawyer, Patricia Harper, was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family law. Her office was downtown, all glass and steel efficiency. "What exactly are you expecting to find, Mr. Ellison?" she asked during our first consultation. "I'm hoping I'm wrong," I lied. "But if I'm right, I want to be prepared." Smart man. Too many people wait until after the bomb explodes to start thinking about damage control. She explained the legal process for disclaiming paternity and the financial implications. In Texas, if you could prove non-paternity within a certain time frame, you weren't responsible for child support. The key was acting quickly and having solid evidence. Document everything, she advised. Dates, times, conversations, financial records. The more evidence you have, the stronger your position. I was already 3 steps ahead of her. At home, Lora was playing the devoted pregnant wife perfectly. She'd started leaving pregnancy books around the house and talking about nursery colors. She'd even suggested we start looking at larger houses. "Something with a good school district," she said over dinner one night. "I want our baby to have every advantage." Our baby. The possessive pronoun felt like a knife twist. "That sounds expensive," I replied carefully. "Well, Wade mentioned that his neighborhood has excellent schools. Maybe we could look around there." Of course he did. Wade seems to have a lot of opinions about our family planning. He's just being helpful. He grew up around there, so he knows the area well. Right. Helpful. That weekend, I followed them. Not proud of it, but necessary for evidence gathering. Lora claimed to be going shopping with Sabrina, but she met Wade at a coffee shop across town. They sat close together, his hand resting on her still flat stomach while they looked at something on her phone. Probably ultrasound pictures. Of his child that I was expected to support. I took photos from my car, making sure to capture the intimate nature of their interaction. The timestamp on my camera would provide additional documentation. When Lora came home with shopping bags from stores she'd never visited, I didn't say anything. I just added the details to my spreadsheet and waited. The DNA results arrived on a Tuesday. I intercepted the mail before Lora got home from work, my hands shaking as I opened the envelope in my car. The numbers were clear and unambiguous. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the paper that confirmed what I already knew. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a statistical impossibility. That evening, Lora was unusually affectionate. She curled up next to me on the couch and talked about baby names while I held the DNA results in my jacket pocket. I was thinking maybe Michael for a boy, she said. Or Sarah for a girl. Classic names, you know? Those are nice, I managed. I'm so happy, Grant. I know we've had our problems, but this baby is going to change everything. We're going to be a real family. A real family. Built on lies and deception. I excused myself and went to my office, where I added the DNA results to my growing file of evidence. Then I called Patricia Harper and left a message. The numbers are in. We need to talk. The next phase of Project Audit was about to begin, and I had a feeling Lora wasn't going to like the results. I decided to confront Lora on a Saturday morning. She was always more relaxed on weekends, less guarded. I made coffee and toast, set the DNA results next to her plate, and waited. She came downstairs in her bathrobe, humming softly and rubbing her small bump. The picture of maternal bliss. Morning, honey, she said, kissing my cheek. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Coffee's fresh. She sat down and reached for her cup, then noticed the papers. Her face went through a series of expressions, confusion, recognition, and finally panic. What is this? I think you know what it is, Lora. Her hands shook as she picked up the document. This is wrong. These tests make mistakes all the time. You can't trust. 0% probability of paternity. That's not a mistake. That's a mathematical certainty. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You had no right to do this behind my back. This is our baby, Grant. Our baby. No, it's not. I kept my voice calm, level. It's Wade's baby, and you're going to tell me the truth. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the party. Her drunken laughter filled the kitchen as her own voice condemned her. My boring husband will be paying for our baby, and he doesn't even know it's not his. The color drained from her face. You recorded me? You recorded yourself? I just happened to be listening. She collapsed back into the chair, her composure crumbling. Grant, I can explain. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you've been having an affair with Wade Fuller. I think you got pregnant with his child and decided to pass it off as mine. I think you've been lying to me for months while planning to make me financially responsible for another man's baby. What part of that is wrong? Tears started flowing, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her. Just cold satisfaction at finally hearing the truth. It just happened, she sobbed. Wade and I, we were working late, and one thing led to another. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but then you realized you could have your cake and eat it too. Keep your stable husband for financial security while having your fun with Wade. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Lora? Explain it to me. She wiped her nose with a napkin, trying to regain some composure. You and I, we've been distant for years. We barely talk anymore. We don't have fun together. Wade makes me feel alive again. So you decided to have his baby and make me pay for it. I hoped maybe it would bring us closer together, give us something to focus on besides our problems. The audacity was breathtaking. You thought lying to me about the paternity of your child would bring us closer together? I was going to tell you eventually. When? After 18 years of child support payments? She had no answer for that. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, where I'd prepared another envelope. Here's what's going to happen, Lora. I've already filed paperwork to disclaim paternity. I've moved our joint assets to accounts in my name only. I've documented your affair and your lies. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm protecting myself from your choices. She followed me as I headed toward the door. Where are you going? To see my lawyer. Then to have a conversation with your HR department about employees who conduct personal relationships on company time and commit insurance fraud. Grant, please, we can work this out. I turned back to look at her one last time. She was standing in our kitchen in her bathrobe, pregnant with another man's child, begging me to continue living her lie. No, Lora, we really can't. The drive to Patricia Harper's office gave me time to think about the next steps. The legal process was straightforward. Disclaim paternity, file for divorce, divide assets. But I wanted more than just legal protection. I wanted consequences. You have everything you need for a clean break, Patricia confirmed after reviewing my evidence. The DNA test, the recordings, the documentation of deception. No judge will hold you financially responsible for this child. What about the insurance fraud? That's trickier. You'd need to prove she deliberately misrepresented information for financial gain. The emergency contact forms help, but you'd need more. I had an idea about that. That afternoon, I drove to Dr. Klein's dental clinic. The office manager, Mrs. Patel, was a detail-oriented woman who took company policies very seriously. I'm concerned about some irregularities in my wife's behavior, I told her, showing her copies of the insurance forms and emergency contact information. She's listed Wade Fuller as the birth partner for her pregnancy, and I have evidence they've been conducting a personal relationship during work hours. Mrs. Patel's expression grew stern as she reviewed the documents. This is very serious, Mr. Ellison. We have strict policies about workplace relationships and the use of company resources for personal matters. I thought you should know. I'm sure Dr. Klein wants to maintain the clinic's professional reputation. She assured me she would investigate immediately. From the parking lot, I called Wade's cell phone. He answered on the second ring, his voice cocky as always. Grant, what's up, man? I think we need to talk, Wade, about your relationship with my wife. Silence. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Why don't you meet me at Murphy's bar tonight around 8? We can discuss it over drinks. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. See you at 8. Murphy's was a neighborhood dive bar, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Perfect for what I had planned. Wade arrived looking nervous, his usual swagger replaced by obvious anxiety. He'd brought back up his girlfriend Maya, a pretty brunette who clearly had no idea what was going on. Grant. Wade nodded as they approached my table. This is Maya. Maya, this is Grant Ellison. Nice to meet you, she said, extending her hand. Wade's told me so much about you and your wife. Has he? That's interesting, because he's told me quite a lot about himself, too. Wade's face went pale. Maybe we should talk privately. No, I think Maya should hear this. After all, it concerns her, too. I pulled out a folder and set it on the table. Congratulations, Wade. You're going to be a father. Maya looked confused. What? Wade's been having an affair with my wife. She's pregnant with his child. The bar suddenly got very quiet. Maya stared at Wade, who was opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. That's not... Grant, you're misunderstanding. Am I? I opened the folder and showed them the DNA results. 0% probability that I'm the father. But don't worry, Wade. I'm sure you kept the receipts. Maya stood up abruptly, her chair falling backward. You snake! She grabbed her drink and threw it in Wade's face before storming toward the exit. Wade jumped up to follow her, but she was already gone. Maya, wait! He turned back to me, dripping with beer and humiliation. You bastard! You planned this. I just shared some information. What you two do with it is up to you. He left without another word, leaving me alone at the table with my beer and my satisfaction. The other patrons were already whispering among themselves, spreading the gossip that would be all over the neighborhood by morning. Phase 2 of Project Audit was complete. Monday morning brought the consequences I'd been waiting for. I was in my office when Patricia Harper called with an update. The paternity disclaimer has been filed and accepted by the court, she said. You're officially not the father, and you have no financial obligation to the child. What about Lora? She can contest it, but with the DNA evidence, she won't get anywhere. She's going to need to find another source of support. That source would presumably be Wade, who was having problems of his own. Mrs. Patel had called me the previous evening to inform me that both Lora and Wade had been terminated from the clinic following their investigation into workplace misconduct. Dr. Klein doesn't tolerate unprofessional behavior, she'd explained. The evidence you provided, combined with our own internal review, made it clear that company policies had been violated. So now they were both unemployed, expecting a baby, and facing the reality that their actions had consequences. Lora had been calling and texting nonstop since Saturday, alternating between apologies and threats. I'd saved all the messages as additional evidence, but hadn't responded to any of them, until she showed up at my office. Mr. Ellison? My assistant Jennifer looked nervous. Your wife is here, and she's quite upset. I could hear Laura's voice in the reception area, high-pitched and demanding. I need to see my husband right now. This is an emergency. Send her in, I told Jennifer, and closed the door behind her. Lora burst into my office like a hurricane, her hair disheveled and her eyes red from crying. She'd clearly not slept much since our kitchen confrontation. Grant, you have to stop this. You're ruining everything. I'm not ruining anything. I'm just refusing to be part of your lie anymore. I lost my job. Wade lost his job. How are we supposed to support the baby now? That sounds like a problem for you and Wade to figure out. She collapsed into the chair across from my desk, sobbing dramatically. My parents won't even talk to me. They said I've disgraced the family. I wasn't surprised. Harold and Margaret Finch were old-school Catholics who valued reputation above almost everything else. Learning their daughter was pregnant with another man's child while married would have been devastating for them. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. You planned all of this. You wanted to destroy my life. I wanted to protect myself from your lies. There's a difference. She leaned forward, her expression shifting from desperation to calculation. I know things about you too, Grant. Things that could hurt your precious reputation. Such as? The money you moved from our joint accounts. That's theft. No, it's not. I had legal right to access those funds, and I documented everything properly. What about the recording you made of me? That's illegal in Texas. I smiled. Actually, it's not. Texas is a one-party consent state, which means I can record any conversation I'm part of. And since you were talking to me when you made those statements at the party, I was legally entitled to record them. Her face fell as she realized her threats were empty. Here's what's going to happen, Lora. You're going to stop calling me, stop coming to my office, and stop trying to involve me in your problems. You made your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. I'll go to the newspapers. I'll tell them how you abandoned your pregnant wife. Go ahead. I have DNA evidence proving the child isn't mine, recordings of you admitting to the affair, and documentation of your attempts to defraud me. I think the public will be very interested in that story. She stared at me for a long moment, perhaps finally understanding that her situation was hopeless. Then she stood up and walked toward the door. You used to be a good man, Grant. I'm still a good man. I'm just not a stupid one anymore. After she left, I sat back in my chair and considered my next move. The legal and financial aspects were handled, but I wasn't quite finished yet. Lora and Wade had humiliated me, lied to me, and tried to make me complicit in their deception. They deserved more than just unemployment and public embarrassment. They deserved to understand exactly what they'd lost. That evening, I drove to Wade's apartment complex, a trendy development that was probably too expensive for a dental assistant's salary. His BMW was in the parking lot, though I noticed it now had a large scratch along the driver's side and what looked like unpaid bills tucked under the windshield wipers. Maya had clearly made her feelings known. I didn't approach his apartment directly. Instead, I waited in my car until I saw him come outside to check his mail. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the appearance of a man whose world had collapsed. I rolled down my window. Wade! He looked up, startled, then walked over to my car with obvious reluctance. What do you want, Grant? Just wanted to see how you're doing. I heard about the job situation. Yeah, well, thanks to you, we're both unemployed. Thanks to me? I didn't make you have an affair with my wife. He leaned against my car, looking defeated. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. It just happened, man. We didn't plan for it to get this complicated. You didn't plan to get caught, you mean? Look, I know you're angry, but taking it out on Lora isn't going to fix anything. She needs support right now. The audacity was incredible. She needs support from you, Wade. You're the father. I can't afford to support a baby right now. I'm behind on rent, my car payment, everything. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to play house with my wife. I started my engine, but Wade grabbed the window frame. Wait, maybe we can work something out. Some kind of arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I don't know. Maybe you could help with some of the expenses, and in exchange, we keep this quiet. No more public drama. I stared at him in disbelief. You want me to pay you to keep quiet about your affair with my wife? It's not like that. I'm just saying, we all made mistakes here. No, Wade. You and Lora made mistakes. I just refused to pay for them. I put the car in drive and pulled away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see him kicking at the ground in frustration. The final phase of Project Audit was about to begin. The storm hit Houston on a Thursday night in late September, bringing with it the kind of rain that turns streets into rivers and makes everyone want to stay inside. I was in my home office reviewing some client files when I heard the pounding on my front door. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor with an emergency. The pounding was urgent, desperate. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw Lora standing on my porch, soaked to the skin and visibly pregnant now at 6 months along. Wade was with her, looking equally miserable in the downpour. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. What do you want, Lora? We need to talk, she said, water dripping from her hair onto my doormat. All three of us. I think we've said everything that needs to be said. Please, Grant, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let them into my living room. They stood there dripping on my hardwood floors, looking like a pair of drowned rats. You can't keep punishing us forever, Lora began. What's done is done. We need to figure out how to move forward. I've moved forward. You two are the ones who seem to be stuck. Wade stepped forward, trying to project some of his old confidence. Look, Grant, we know we messed up, but we're trying to make the best of a bad situation here. How noble of you. The thing is, Lora continued, we're both unemployed. We can't afford the medical bills, and the baby's going to need things. Wade's been staying with me, but my landlord is threatening eviction. And this is my problem how? You were married to me for 15 years, she said, her voice rising. That has to count for something. I'm not asking you to be the father, but maybe you could help us get back on our feet? The sheer audacity of the request left me speechless for a moment. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly. You want me to financially support you and your lover while you raise his child together? It's not like that. That's exactly what it's like, Lora. You're asking me to subsidize the consequences of your affair. Wade tried a different approach. We could pay you back eventually, once we get new jobs. With what? Your sterling reputation in the dental community? Your impressive track record of honesty and professional behavior? You don't have to be cruel about it, Lora snapped. Cruel? You think I'm being cruel? I laughed, and the sound surprised even me. You lied to me for months. You tried to trick me into raising another man's child. You committed fraud with our insurance, destroyed our marriage, and humiliated me in front of our entire social circle. And now you want me to write you a check? I made mistakes. You made choices, Lora. Deliberate, calculated choices. And now you want me to save you from the consequences. The argument was getting louder, and I noticed lights coming on in neighboring houses. The storm might have driven people inside, but it hadn't made them deaf. You used to love me, Lora said, tears mixing with rainwater on her face. The man I married would have helped me. The man you married was a fool who trusted you. That man doesn't exist anymore. Wade stepped between us, his jaw set with determination. That's enough. You've made your point, Grant. But you're not going to keep talking to her like that. Or what? Or I'll make you stop. I looked at Wade, really looked at him. He was younger than me, in better shape, probably stronger. But he was also desperate, unemployed, and facing 18 years of financial responsibility he couldn't handle. His girlfriend had left him, his job was gone, and his future looked bleak. I was calm, prepared, and held all the cards. You want to threaten me, Wade? In my own house? I'm not threatening anybody. I'm just saying you need to show some respect. Respect? I pulled out my phone and started recording. Like the respect you showed when you were sleeping with my wife? Like the respect Lora showed when she tried to make me pay for your baby? Put that away, Wade said, reaching for my phone. I stepped back, still recording. Don't touch me, Wade. That would be assault, and I'm documenting everything. You're crazy, Lora said. This whole thing has made you crazy. No, this whole thing has made me careful. There's a difference. The sound of car doors slamming outside caught our attention. Through the window, I could see several neighbors gathering on the sidewalk despite the rain, drawn by the shouting. Great, Wade muttered. Now we have an audience. You brought this on yourselves, I said. You wanted drama, you got drama. Lora was crying harder now, her hands pressed to her belly. I can't do this anymore, Grant. I can't keep fighting with you. Then stop fighting. Accept that your choices have consequences and figure out how to deal with them. We tried to deal with them. We tried to make it work. By lying and manipulating and trying to trick me into paying for your mistakes. Wade moved toward me again, his face red with anger. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so much better than us? I think I'm more honest than you. That's not the same thing. Honest? You've been plotting against us for months. Recording conversations, following us around, turning people against us. I've been protecting myself from liars and fraudsters. If that makes me the bad guy in your story, I can live with that. The front door opened, and I turned to see my neighbor Tom Peterson standing in the doorway, rain dripping from his jacket. Everything okay in here, Grant? We heard shouting. Everything's fine, Tom. Just having a discussion with my ex-wife and her boyfriend about personal responsibility. Tom looked at Lora's pregnant belly, then at Wade, then back at me. The neighborhood gossip network had already filled him in on the basic details. Maybe this discussion should happen somewhere more private, he suggested diplomatically. Maybe it should happen somewhere else entirely, I agreed, looking pointedly at Lora and Wade. We're not leaving until we settle this, Lora said defiantly. There's nothing to settle. I've made my position clear. Your position is wrong, she shouted. You can't just abandon people when they need help. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm refusing to enable liars and cheaters. More neighbors had gathered outside, and I could see them whispering among themselves. The storm was providing quite a show. Wade grabbed Lora's arm. Come on, let's go. This isn't working. No, she shook him off. I'm not leaving until he agrees to help us. He's not going to help us, Lora. Look at him. He's enjoying this. I wasn't enjoying it exactly, but I was satisfied with it. For months, they had controlled the narrative, made me the unwitting victim of their deception. Now the truth was out, and they were facing the consequences of their actions in front of an audience. You said I was a loser, Lora, I said quietly. You laughed about how your boring husband would pay for your baby. You mocked my job, my appearance, my dedication to our marriage. You made me a joke. I was drunk. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You meant every word. And now you're here, begging that same loser husband to save you from the mess you created. She stared at me, perhaps finally understanding that this wasn't just about money or support. This was about respect, dignity, and the price of betrayal. So here's my final answer, I continued. No, I will not help you. I will not support you. I will not enable your poor choices or cushion the consequences of your lies. You made your bed with Wade, and now you get to lie in it. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain against the windows and the murmur of voices from outside. Finally, Wade took Lora's arm again. We're done here. This time, she didn't resist. They walked toward the door, their shoulders slumped in defeat. This isn't over, Grant, Lora said as they reached the threshold. Yes, it is. I watched from my window as they walked through the crowd of neighbors, heads down, humiliated. Cars were pulling up now, drawn by the spectacle. Cell phones were out, recording everything. By morning, the whole neighborhood would know exactly what had happened. By the end of the week, the story would have spread throughout their former social and professional circles. They had wanted to make me a fool, but in the end, they had made fools of themselves. I closed the door, locked it, and returned to my office. On my desk was the final paperwork from Patricia Harper, the divorce decree, the paternity disclaimer, and the financial settlement that left me with everything I'd brought into the marriage. Project Audit was complete. The numbers had been reconciled, the discrepancies identified, and the appropriate corrections made. Numbers don't lie, but people do, and sometimes the truth is the most devastating revenge of all.